A very good morning to all my dear students of class 8. This is the third class on the story. This is Jodi's Fawn, and today we will start with the third part of the story. In the previous one, we just found that Jodi is in a scary atmosphere among the ferocious animals, the buzzards, and all in the woods, in the forest. Not a single sound was heard there. So, but Jodi has resolved to find the fawn back. Let's see what happens. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he trembled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wandering motion and shook him through with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. It made no effort to rise or run. Jodi could not trust himself to move. He whispered, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. Delirious means excited, extraordinarily, extremely excited. So, getting a human touch, the baby fawn becomes very delirious, happy, excited. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. He stroked its sides gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the fawn at as high as possible under his arm. So, Jodi has got the fawn back. So Jodi is handling the fawn as if it's a china. What's there? China deer or something? Yes, china deer. So as if it's something. It's a fragile thing, handling with care. And Jodi was very happy to get the earthly smell from the body of the fawn, and it was so soft. Jodi was so excited, and the fawn was also very much delirious, excited to have them. So this is the meeting point between the boy and the baby fawn. Both of them were extremely excited. Okay. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat as at sight and smell of its mother. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The fawn's leg caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his own with freedom. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with the stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. He said, enchanted, "I will carry you after I get my breath." He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. He started away slowly. The fawn started after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and carried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call to it to come to him. He dared not alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over the two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. So this is the journey. From the forest, after getting the fawn, the journey of Jodi and the baby fawn begins towards the towards Jodi's house where Jodi lived. It's a wonderful description where both of them walk together, and his father said that if it is carried, then it can follow you. So it walked, and Jodi walked, and the fawn followed, and it alternatively happened between them. So they two were happily proceeding towards Jodi's home. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. When he walked on and Fawn followed him at once, he allowed it to walk a little distance and then picked it up again. The distance home was nothing. He could have walked all day into the night, carrying it, watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the phone to manage it. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom, with the fawn walking behind him. But at the steps, the fawn balked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. Jodi called, "Pa, look." Penny turned ahead. Jodi stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. He said, "I am glad you found him." So now both of them are babies now. While walking, their arms are aching, means paining. Still, they walked and reached the home. And now, how to go there? So Jodi decided to take him to his Penny's room, and Penny was also very much happy to see them there. And in front of the father, both the child and the baby fawn, both of them were same. He said that both their eyes are glittering. Okay, so the father, Penny, also became affectionate, not only towards his son, but also towards the baby fawn, whose mother had to be killed in order to save his own life. Okay. Jodi then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning milk stood in the kitchen safe. The cream had risen on it. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It butted it suddenly, smelling the milk. He saved it precautiously from spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. He dipped his fingers again and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. It stamped its small hoofs impatiently. As long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk, the fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flickered back and forth. The lust of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. So, now after returning home, it was nearly morning. Now Jodi offered the milk that was kept there in the kitchen, and the baby fawn took the milk, and Jodi was aesthetically happy to get the touch of the fawn's tongue and the small tail there. So it was an aesthetic feeling for them. Okay. Now, students, we will see this chapter is covered. Both of them are very happy. But we will see here that the father and the son, both of them are having a sense of guilt in them, that it is due to the bite of the rattlesnake. They were forced to cut the dough, and they have left the fawn there alone. So they wanted to do something for the good of the fawn, basically the child Jodi. We will see, students, that conscience is very much important. All of us are having a sense of right and wrong within us, that is called our conscience. If sometimes we are forced to commit anything wrong, or if we do anything wrong, then we must not forget that there is our conscience which will poke us and force us to do the justified thing, the right thing, which happened in the case of Jodi also. And his father was also relieved and happy that the doe whose flesh saved his life, at least the fawn is not alone without its mother in the forest. The fawn is also saved. It's a wonderful, wonderful story about human conscience, how it works, and how we have the feelings. We have our feelings for animals and others. We are human beings, we are fallible. We may do mistakes, but we should have the conscience within us. We should have the intention within us that we have to, as much as possible, do good to others, whether it is other human beings or animals. So students, bye for today, and in the next class I will be giving you questions. Okay, bye.